Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Meiser Sheni, Pede Gimel, Halacha Hey, and Halacha Vav. We're learning today Daf Lamed. We left off on Daf Lamed, Amud Aleph, all the way at the end of the top line. Quickly, let's go back to Halacha Hey, Beis Hillel rules that Meiser Sheni that becomes Tameh through a Vlad, Labar Kapara, as we are learning our Sugi, that means if it only becomes Tameh Midrabanan, that Meiser Sheni may not be removed from Yerushalayim, but if it becomes Tameh in Yerushalayim, but through an Av, then yes, Beis Hillel will hold that it may be removed from Yerushalayim. Don't confuse this with Marasayin. That was all a Beis Shammai, and now we're just going to the halacha, to the opinion of Beis Hillel. Now, that's where we left off. Now, if one eats food purchased, just to know, with Meiser Sheni money, not original Meiser Sheni, food purchased with Meiser Sheni money outside Yerushalayim, clear that is just like eating the original Meiser Sheni produce outside Yerushalayim, for which the violator doing so b'mezid, with asra, etc., will be chayiv malchus. Now, the Mishnah, Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, was dealing only with the original Meiser Sheni produce. The Gemara is going to wonder whether everything that we learned almost for 2 days, means from the Mishnah and yesterday's Sugya, Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, could also equally be applied to produce that was bought with produce, with money of Meiser Sheni. And the Gemara is going to conclude that yes, that they mamish travel on the same track, and that would lead us, and that leads us into the new Mishnah, Halacha Vav. Chavre, just to know that Halacha Vav, that begins on Daf Lamed, Amud Aleph, concludes at the end of Daf Lamed Aleph, Amud Aleph. Means the remaining of the shir today, the bulk of today's daf will be a Mishnah. The Mishnah will begin quoting a Machlokes Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda regarding food that was bought with Meiser Sheni money that became Tameh. So we have been learning that you can redeem it. But it becomes clear that Halacha Hey is speaking about the original. What happens if you have food that was purchased with Ma'is Meiser Sheni that became Tameh? So you would argue, why would that be different? And indeed, the Chachamim hold that you can redeem it. Right? The whole question is, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel, can you remove it? Can you not remove it? But you for sure could redeem it. The Tana Rabbi Yehuda holds, imagine, that you have to bury it. In other words, Rabbi Yehuda will hold that something that is not even the original will have in this area a stringency that if food purchased with Meiser Sheni becomes Tameh, there's no solution. You cannot redeem it. You have to bury it. After we establish this machlokes in the Mishnah, the Mishnah is going to speak about various scenarios and various arguments regarding someone who purchased a deer with Ma'is Meiser Sheni. That's just a mashal of someone who bought a living animal, not for a shlamim, right? A deer is a chaya, but lebasar taiva. What's going to happen if it died? What's going to happen if after you shechted it, it became tamei? Again, there's going to be various scenarios that the Mishnah will speak out. And from there, the Mishnah will move on to speak about containers that have in them wine of Meiser Sheni that is inside kankanim. There will be cases where the kankanim themselves will have the status of Meiser Sheni, meaning that you have to take the kankanim to Yerushalayim with the wine. Meaning that if you want to redeem the wine, you also have to pay redemption money for the kankanim. And ironically, just for the record, even when the kankanim will be Meiser Sheni, it's not mamis Meiser Sheni. It only has that status when the wine is in it. But the moment one will finish consuming the wine, once the kankan becomes empty because you consumed it, those kankanim will revert back to chulim, as we will see. After the Mishnah speaks about jugs, containers, big containers that are filled with wine of Meiser Sheni, we're going to speak about kankanim that are filled with wine of Truma. The Mishnah is going to begin speaking about the topic of ta'aroivis. Such kankanim got mixed into chulin kankanim. Generally, the rule is, for those of us that are learning Rambam, we just had this, right, that Truma is batal echad b'meya, but a davar chashav is not batal. And how that's going to play out, that if the kankanim are sealed, then afilu be'elef loy batal, as we will see the pratim while we learn the Mishnah. So Chevra, let's go inside Daf Lamed Amud Aleph at the end of the top line. Again, we are referring not to the sheet of Beis Shammai, which was the bulk of yesterday's daf. We are going to the opinion of Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel says that when the original Ma'aser Sheni was brought into Yerushalayim, and in Yerushalayim it became Tamei, Beis Hillel says you are allowed to remove it if it became Tamei Ba'av, which means Labar Kapara, if it became Tamei Midoi Raisa, whether on the level of a Rishon, whether on the level of a Sheni. But if it became Tamei in Yerushalayim, but only on the level of a Derabanan, only on a level of Derabanan, you're not allowed to take it out. And just to repeat, the big chiddush we had yesterday, Be'emes, if it became Tamei, even outside, only on a level of Derabanan, and you bring it in, you should not be allowed to take it out. Because Beis Hillel is mechalik between Tumei D'Oraisa, takes away Mechitzas Koltas. Tumei D'Rabbanan doesn't take away Mechitzas Koltas. However, if it became Tamei outside, and prior to bringing it in, you made a Tanai by saying, I don't want for the Mechitzas to be Koltas, then, and only then, are you allowed to take it out. Now, when you brought it in the state of Tara, you made no such Tanai. And if you did make such a Tanai, the Gemara had a discussion. At least b'di'evid, if you took it out, that will be okay. Okay, so that's where we left with Beis Hillel. So now the Gemara wants to know, Rab Chia bar Ada asked in front of Rabbi Mana, what happens if nitma b'volad hatuma, as we mentioned in Yerushalayim, and Beis Hillel, you're not allowed to take it out. Fine, but you redeemed it. Now you have to eat it inside, but you can't take it out. That's the whole vart. What happens if now, listen to this, v'chazar v'nitma ba'af hatuma. Now again, this so-called chulin produce, which has a restriction, you cannot take it outside Yerushalayim. What happens if now it becomes tamei on the level of an av? Now, what's the question? Question is that people might not know that it became tamei on the level of an av. So therefore, if you want to remove it, perhaps you have to redeem it again. It's when something becomes tamei on a level of an av, midoi raisa, Beis Hillel says you can take it out of Yerushalayim. Here it became tamei only midrabanan. You already redeemed it. But you can't take it out of Yerushalayim. If it becomes now tamei on a level of an av, option number one is okay. Now you can remove it. Option number two is now you have to redeem it again. Amazing. And Neymar, so the Gemara just says like this, that this question, if you still have the original money that you used for the redemption of when it became tamei bivlad, im hoyu hamois rishonis kayamois, okay, big deal. So use the same money again. You're not going out of pocket. Mechalal aleim. But im lav. But if you don't have the original money, he's responding. He's saying, einoi mechalal aleihen. If you don't have those monies, they can't be used because they're not here. In other words, if you want to remove it from Yerushalayim, you have to redeem it again. But there's one nakuda. The whole concept of redeeming it again is not a real redemption because the produce is really chulin. And therefore, the ein loikin ala mois hashniyos. Someone used the mois hashniyos not for what you normally have to use ma'aser sheni funds for. And if they don't do that, b'meizet they chayev malchus. Here they won't be chayev malchus. Because what you redeemed was already not ma'aser sheni. You already redeemed it. But Beis Hillel is going to be so machmer, once it became tamei bevlad and you redeemed it, and the halacha of you may not remove it, you have to eat it in Yerushalayim, was put into effect. If you want to take it out of Yerushalayim, even though it became tamei ba'av now, you have to redeem it a second time. How great is that? Now, as we mentioned in our words of introduction, our Mishnah, meaning halacha, is speaking about the original Ma'aser Sheni. Now, the Gemara is going to wonder, that will be the final topic before the new Mishnah. Rabbi Yoina Boyem. Will the entire Mishnah Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, can you take it out? Can you not take it out? Av and the Vlad. Av lilokuach kain. Will the same apply to foods that were not original Meiser Sheni, but the original was redeemed Kalchasa outside Yerushalayim. And with the Ma'is of Meiser Sheni, you bought now replacement food. What happens if now the food becomes tummy? Will we apply the same laws of the Mishnah or not? So the Gemara says, Omar Rav Maneh, that yes, it will. Because the whole basis of the reason why Lebei Shammai or Lebei Hillel, there is an issue or not an issue, whether you can remove the Meiser Sheni after it became Tameh outside Yerushalayim, is because of the law of Mechitza Toifesas, Mechitza Skoltas. Now, the din is, forget about Tuma. If I were to go ahead and to buy with Ma'ois Meiser Sheni food outside Yerushalayim, we know we shouldn't have done it. But if I did that, in many cases, the Mishnah Paskin, you have to take it into Yerushalayim. And what happens when you take it into Yerushalayim? You're not allowed to remove it. V'halakuach is also toifes. In other words, the din of mechitzas koltes or mechitza toifeses does not differentiate between the original or that which was bought. L'lakuach mima'is meiser sheni. And since they are the same, automatically everything we learned in the Mishnah will be the same as well. In other words, let's follow Shitas Beis Hillel. So even something which was only Lekuach b'Mois Meiser Sheni, if it becomes Tamei, so the din will be same thing. If it became Tamei Ba'av, Lebar Kapara Midoy Raisa, LeBeis Hillel, that product is allowed to be removed. However, if it became Tameh on the level only of a Derabanan, even LeBeis Hillel, that's generally more lenient, will be Machmer. And he's going to say that it may not be removed from Yerushalayim. Rabbinic Tuma doesn't have the power to break the Mechitza Koiletes or Mechitza Teifeses, even if it is, let's say, the derivative of Meiser Sheni, not the original Meiser Sheni. Okay, very nice, very simple. Now you're going to appreciate this, the one who was Mesader Yerushalmi, why this question was put dafke here, because even though the Gemara presented it in the direction of a leniency, in other words, that maybe something that's lekuach b'mois meiser sheni should be more lenient. Maybe LeBeis Hillel, even if it only became tamei on the level of a vlad, maybe you should be allowed to remove it. That was the Gemara's Havamin. And why should it be more lenient? Yeah, of course, because it's not the original. Original is original. You know, you have the ikir, you have the tafel. You can use these words. The ikir is the produce itself, and now it's like a tfeilaloy. You're going to see in the first machlekes of many machlekes in of halacha vav that there is a tana that actually treats the tafel, the lekuach mimois meiser sheni, more chamur than the original, which is going to be gavaldik. And let's go. Says the Mishnah, halakuach bekesev meiser. You have food that was purchased with Meiser Sheni, and it became Tameh. So we just finished the sugya. That was the sugya of halacha hey, even though the Mishnah did not say so explicitly, but that was the beginning of the Gemara on halacha hey, that we learn ki lo yisuchal se'eso yachidish adrasha, that even if you are in Yerushalayim, you're not ki yirchak. You're not far. You are in Yerushalayim. Se'esai means you can't eat it. If you can't eat it, why would you not be able to eat it? Because it became tamei. Whether d'oraisa or d'rabanan, that's for sure. So then the Torah tells you can redeem it. So that we know. Question is, do we apply the same, not on the original, but will we apply the same if you have produce that's lekuach? And the Tanakama, the Chachamim say, absolutely. Why would you not? The whole lekuach is a replacement of the original. So the rules of the original will be the same rules for the replacement. Aber Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no. That lekuach bekesev meiser sheni has to be treated more stringently. If it becomes tamei, you are not allowed to redeem it. You're not allowed to eat it. Now, just to know that when you can't eat it and you can't redeem it, sometimes we say, let it rot. Right? Rabbi Yehuda is afraid that someone accidentally will eat it. He doesn't want for there to be Tommy Meiser Sheni just laying around waiting for it to get ruined. So you have to bury it. Bury it right away. You cover it. Like this, No one will accidentally eat it. Now, that makes absolutely no sense. The Gemara is going to challenge the Mishnah. The whole daf today now is the Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to quote the challenge that the Chachamim have against Rabbi Yehuda. So, Amru Loi, Rabbi Yehuda, everyone else was on the other side. Ma im meiser sheni atzmei shenitma. The simple Kavachim, the original. Harei nifta. How can it be that halakoch bekesav meiser shenitma? Eino din sheyipadeh. Is it not logical that it should also be allowed to be redeemed? And quoting the words of the Tosefta that the Rashi earlier brings, that ayu machmer betfela yoser min ha'ikar, doesn't work that way. So Amalahem, Rabbi Yehuda has a gewaldige response. Lo, don't give me a kal v'chomer, and I'll tell you why. Im amartem b'maiser, when it comes to the original, let's turn to the Flamed Amid Beis. Maiser sheni atzmai. Shekein hu nifta b'tohoir uberichuk makim. When you have the original, as the pasuk writes explicitly, before you bring it into Yerushalmi. Yeah, I know it has to be richuk makim, but if you want, the Torah says you don't want to schlep it. The pshat ki yirchak mimicha hamakim ki lo yisuchal se'esai. So the Torah allows you to redeem it prior to it ever entering Yerushalayim, but absolutely no problem. Now, Lakuach bekesav ma'aser sheni does not have this rule. Lakuach b'ma'aser sheni, we already mentioned that ideally, when you redeem your original, you should take the money to Yerushalayim. But what happens if someone bought ma'aser sheni outside Yerushalayim? There, the rule is you have to take that to Yerushalayim. That is not allowed to be redeemed. So you already see that Lakuach bekesav ma'aser sheni is treated more stringently than the original ma'aser sheni. If you bought it outside Yerushalayim. We're not even talking about buying it in Yerushalayim. Now, should you have bought it outside Yerushalayim? No. Let's go with that. Really, we had a machloikas about that above. But even if you say no, but if you did it, what you did is done. We're not talking about the case where you bought something that will never make it fresh. We're talking you bought something that's going to last. Even though it never had mechitzas koltes, even though you are berichuk makim, but she'enoi nifta b'toiru berichuk makim. So that's great. So the Rabbi Yehuda says you already see that lakuach bekesav ma'aser sheni is treated more stringently. So therefore, I have the right to say. Now, why would he say it? The Mishnah doesn't say. The Gemara is going to give you a source. No, it's Rabbi Yehuda and the Mishnah is just responding to, you don't have a kal v'chomer. Don't tell me that the tefela is not more chamor than the ikad. It already is. Even you agree that it is. You're not allowed to redeem it outside Yerushalayim. Okay. And I hold that therefore, because of a source that the Gemara is going to bring, if it became tamei in Yerushalayim, may not be redeemed anywhere. Forget about taking it in, taking it out. And Narvas, then you have to let it, you have to bury it. You can't even let it rot. You have to bury it. Now hold the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, and we're going to see how this applies in the next case. The Mishnah is going to give us various arguments, three scenarios when it comes to someone who bought a deer. This is just a mashal. And again, the point of a deer is that if you are buying a behema, then we all learned already that ideally you should have bought it l'shlamim. The case of the Mishnah is you did not buy it l'shlamim, you bought it l'basar taiva. To make it more galat, you didn't even buy a domesticated animal, so it's not shayach for it to have been bought for a shlamim. You bought a tzvi. Okay, so tzvi shalakachay bekesef. So now you have a not kachim living animal that now is imbued with kedushas ma'aser sheni, and now this animal died. Now I want to go back. There is just a little detail about
Rabbi. The case of the tzvi is outside, right? The case of the tzvi
inside or outside, but it died in Yerushalayim. This is important. Just to say, I'm saying that, Yakir, because ideally, when you are outside Yerushalayim, you shouldn't buy anything with the monies of Ma'aser Sheni. Once you made the first switch from the original into money, what should you do? The Torah says, just to make that clear. in Yerushalayim. Now, Stam, if you bought a deer outside Yerushalayim, then you brought it to Yerushalayim. So you are now in Yerushalayim. You have a deer. It's not kachim. It's Meiser Sheni, right? What would you normally do? You would shecht it and eat it. Here, what happened was it died. Now, what's the issue? The issue is, what would you normally say? Well, redeem it. We already had this before. Why might you not be allowed to redeem it? For those of us who are learning Rambam, it's mamash amazing. We're just learning Hilchas Shchita, Hilchas Nevela, right? Tell you why. There's a rule. Ein poidem es hakachim laha'achilam leklavim. In other words, this is not meat like normal food. If I have an apple, the apple became tummy. I'm allowed to eat chulin, even though the chulin is tummy. I'm allowed to do that. So when I have now my sasheni cannot be eaten if the food is tummy. So I redeem it. But then the apple that became redeemed will be eaten by me. In the worst case scenario, I won't be able to take it out of Yerushalayim, Beseder, but I can eat it. Here you have nevela meat that died without shchita. It's nevela. It's not kosher. A yid is not allowed to eat it. So what will be the purpose of redeeming it? I'm not talking about getting the kedusha onto new money. I'm talking about what would happen with this nevela. It's not that now that you redeemed it, now what? You're not going to eat it. You're going to feed it to your dogs. Just like there's a rule by Kachim that ein poidem es hakachim lachilim leklavim. We had this just recently. Rab Shimon holds, yes, poidem es hakachim lachilim leklavim. So that's going to be subject to a machlokes between whether ein or whether yes. And indeed, that's what the Mishnah writes. You're covered. The Tanakama holds ein poidem es hakachim lachilim leklavim. Milsal gav urcha, even though we had it before, is that if I buy a living animal, yakir, I bought a tzvi and the tzvi lived. And I shechted the tzvi and I ate the tzvi. So we learned before that the oir never got in it the kedusha of Meiser Sheni, because when I bought it, unless I'm a businessman, I wasn't thinking about the hide. The money was only put into the meat, and I ate the meat, and the oir is yatzel chulin. That's what we learned before. But we also learned that if I will not be allowed to eat it, like in this case, I bought a tzvi became an avela. You can't even redeem it. So what do you have to do with it? You have to bury it. Again, burying it is because don't leave it to rot. You might accidentally eat it. I don't know. They bury it. Not only do you have to bury the meat, you have to bury the hide. Here we view the hide not as a subordinate and therefore maybe irrelevant. No, the hide is also now imbued with kedushas meiser sheni. If you can't eat it, you can't. Don't forget, a hide can never be eaten. That was the whole topic. You can only use the money to buy food, and we allowed you to buy an animal because you're not focusing on the hide. You're not paying for the hide. Once you can't eat it, all of it becomes imbued with kedushas meiser sheni. And not only do you have to bury the proper, but you also have to bury it al yad oiroi, which means with the hide. And Abshimin, let's go with the way we learned above, who holds that poidin esa kachim lahachilim leklavim. So this is not like any other meiser sheni. It became inedible. Ki loisuchal se'esoi doesn't only have to mean tummy. We said the word se'esoi means you can't eat it. Okay, you can't eat it because it became an avela. Nothing to do with us. Even chulin and avela you can't eat. So if you can't eat it, then the Torah allows you to redeem it, even though you are in Yerushalayim. Just to know that you have in the Rishonim, in the Mishnah, others who explain this machlokes, even though it fits with what we learned above. The Chachamim, Rab Shimon, poidem es hakachim, ein poidem es hakachim lahachil leklavim. There's another way of understanding the argument. It's time to add, and we had this when we learned kachim and bavli together, that when it comes to kachim, and we are applying it also to meiser sheni, right? Ein poidem es hakachim lahachil leklavim is also about kachim, and we are applying it to meiser sheni. When you buy a living being, whenever the Torah does allow you to redeem it, the Torah uses the words that V'harimoy, hamada v'harach, it's called. The Torah says v'hamidoy lifnei koyin. You have to stand in front of a koyin, and when it's standing, you have to get evaluators to determine how much money it's worth, and that's how you give the money for it. So the Chazal learn out that only something that's standing prior to you evaluating it is something that's redeemable. Something that died, that's not standing, can never be redeemed. So that's a say, and then Rab Shimon will hold that you don't need to have the hamad of aracha. So anyway, whichever one, it's the same concept. Both of them share at Tzad HaShava that rules that we have for Kachim are being applied to Meiser Sheni. So that's Machlokes number one. Simple. Now let's go to the next case. Next case will be again L'kochoi Chai, as we had above. So far the same. You buy the tzvi with Mois Meiser Sheni, and you shechted it. It didn't die. You shechted it. And now, prior to you eating it, now it became tummy. Now, you can say, well, that was just a machlokes we had between the Tanna Kamma and the Rabbi Yehuda, right? Here, the Mishnah is really going to tell you that even the Tanna Rabbi Yehuda that holds that if your original Meiser Sheni becomes tummy, Rabbi Yehuda holds you cover, right? Rabbi Yehuda, not the original, I take that back. If lokuach bekesav Meiser Sheni becomes tamei, that was the first topic of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda holds yikaver. This is lokuach b'ma'is Meiser Sheni. You bought a living tzvi. Rabbi Yehuda will hold yipada here. Why will Rabbi Yehuda? Why will Rabbi Yehuda hold yipada? Because what you bought is no longer here. You bought a living animal. That animal, nothing happened to it. By the way, a living animal b'chal cannot become tummy. Only a midairaisa, only a living Jew can become tummy. Normally, tumah has to do with death. But anyways, so since that which you bought with Meiser Sheni itself did not become tummy, even Rabbi Yehuda will hold yipada. But Rabbi Yosi holds even more than Rabbi Yehuda. That what? That here you have to bury it. That you're not allowed to eat it. And as all of the Noise Kalim say, Rabbi Yosi, I'm reading inside the Pnei Moshe just as an example. Rabbi Yosi, Yoimiri covered the Machmir Tvei mi Rabbi Yehuda. The Sfiro Leid de Lo'olam Heve Keperes Halakucha because of Meiser Sheni. What Rabbi Yehuda holds that the slaughtered meat is not peiros that were bought with Meiser Sheni money, because the emesis, you know what was bought with Meiser Sheni money? The living tzvi, not the slaughtered meat. The slaughtered meat is one step further removed. Now, why would we differentiate? We'll have to wait until next year when we come into the Gemara B'chlal to learn the source of Rabbi Yehuda. So again, this is important. So the same concept that we had in the beginning of the Mishnah, we have over here. It's the same thing. But the players are no longer Rabbi Yehuda sides with the Chachamim, but still there is a Tana, Rabbi Yosi, that says you cover. And now the final ruling when it comes to the Tzvi. And that is what happens. Again, you have Mois of Meiser Sheni. You come into Yerushalayim, Lokachai Shachut. And again, I'm not even going to use the word deer. We're speaking about the same case. Don't forget, if you're buying slaughtered meat, it's not shaykh to buy slaughtered meat l'shlamim. So there's absolutely nothing wrong for you to use money to go into a Lenny's, to go into a Leader's, and for you to buy food. That's what people did with Mois Meiser Sheni. So you bought it shachut. And now, v'nitma. And now it became tamei. So says the Mishnah, Harei hu loy kepeiros. In other words, this is the machlokes Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah didn't want you to think that the difference between, I'm going to call this the Seifa, which is the case of L'kochei Chayush, of L'kochei Chayush Chotei v'nitma, that you don't have Rabbi Yehuda arguing. Maybe the difference, one might have thought the difference is because on Daf Bayos, Daf Lamed Amid Aleph, in the first case of the Mishnah, what happened? You bought peiros. You would think. Maybe meat is different. We don't know. So the Mishnah wants to make it clear that it's not about peiros or meat. It's about what was the food that you bought directly with the ma'os. If the food that you bought directly with the ma'os, Meiser Sheni, becomes tamei, there you have the machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer you covered. The only reason why in the case prior to this, in the case of L'kochei Chayu Shchotei v'nitma, Rabbi Yehuda is agreeing with the Tanna Kamma that yipadem, it's not because meat versus apple. No, it's about that which you bought was living when you bought it. That's what the word is. That is what you bought. After shechting it, we don't view it for it to be the same. It's not that which you bought. That's the only reason why Rabbi Yehuda will agree with the Chachamim that you can redeem. Now, Rabbi Yossi is imachmer tvei. But if you buy the meat lachatchila slaughtered and now that meat becomes tamei, so then the Mishnah is saying harei oloi keperis means no. Now we're back to the original machlokes. Rabbi Yehuda will hold you covered. Rabbi Yossi, of course, will hold you covered. Even Rabbi Yehuda will hold you covered. And now the Mishnah moves on to a whole new topic, and many of the Rishonim explain that what's the link between what we learned until now and the new topic? So let me tell you, the new topic is when you have large containers, not jugs, kankanim, barrels, that are filled with wine of Meiser Sheni. The question is whether the kankan has the status of Meiser Sheni. And let me tell you again, I'll repeat what we said in the introduction. I'll give you two consequences, whether we view the kankanim, the containers, as Meiser Sheni or not. Number one, what happens if you have Meiser Sheni wine inside barrels? You don't want to schlep it to Yerushalmi. So no problem. You can redeem the wine. Are you chayiv to redeem the kankan? Or I'll tell you better. A person has wine of Meiser Sheni in a kankan, and I do want to schlep it in Yerushalmi. I do want to take it to Yerushalmi, but I don't want to take it in this kankan. I want to take it in another jug. If the kankanim that have in it yayin of Meiser Sheni halachically is viewed as Meiser Sheni, just like Meiser Sheni must be taken to Yerushalmi, these kankanim must be taken to Yerushalmi. So whether you're going to take it, the question is whether you have to take it. Whether you want to redeem it onto money, do you have to redeem the kankanim, or can you just get away by redeeming the wine? Let me tell you for what these kankanim vadai are not Meiser Sheni. That if I took these kankanim with its wine to Yerushalmi and I finished the whole wine, now that the kankan is empty, the kankan reverts back to chulin. It's an interesting thing. In other words, it's only viewed as Meiser Sheni.
What I'm saying, as long as the wine is in it.
That's right. And even there's a question. Maybe even when the wine is in it, maybe the kankan is not considered a Meiser Sheni. Now, the link between this and what we had prior, l'chu'ura, the easiest link to make is the tzvi and the hide, because we had the same link above. When we began learning the topic of you only can use money to buy food, can you buy wine in a jug? Can you buy a living animal even though it's coming in a container in the hide? So, stam, that link, and you covered be'oiroi, al yidei oiroi. So you see, in the case where it became tamei, that we do view the oir as Meiser Sheni. That is a simple link. But let's go. And that will be the shayla. And it's going to get nuanced. So we're going to learn the rule, and then we're going to learn the rationale in the Gemara. But what's the rule? Hamashil kankanim l'meiser sheni. Now he's giving an example. If someone lends containers, the containers don't even belong to the same person. The containers belong to me. I loaned it to you for you to store your meiser sheni inside these containers. Says the Mishnah, Af alpi shegafan. The word gafan means you sealed the containers. You, the owner of the wine, you, the borrower of my containers, you seal them. The key is that the wine was already Meiser Sheni prior to it being poured inside the kankanim. Here, the Mishnah is going to say, in such a case, the kankanim will never assume the kedusha of Meiser Sheni, even if they're sealed. Loi kana Meiser means that the containers don't have the status of Meiser Sheni. So, as an example, let's say you are Chaim. You right now decided that you don't want to take it in my kankanim for whatever reason. Let's say you want to leave the wine to age here in Beitar, wherever you are. And what are you going to do is that you're going to get smaller jugs. You're going to move it into smaller jugs and only take some of them in Yerushalayim. And then the rest you'll make into Yayin Yashan Noishan. So you are allowed to do it. There's absolutely no, and you can give me back my containers and the Shalom Al Yisrael. In other words, the kankanim will never acquire the status of Meiser Sheni, if the wine was already Meiser Sheni prior to the wine being poured into the barrel, even if the barrel was sealed. We'll see soon how the sealing of the barrel is consequential in other cases. But if Zalaf L'toichen Stam, but if the person had what we will call Tevel wine, that's the meaning of Stam. In other words, when the wine was poured into the barrel at that moment, the wine was not yet a Meiser Sheni. So now we'll say the following. Acheloi Gafan. Acheloi Gafan means that if prior to sealing it, that's the way the Gemara is going to say, the Gafan we know means sealing it. But if prior to sealing it, you declared that wine to be the Meiser Sheni, so then we're going to say it's just like the first case. That it was first the wine became Meiser Sheni, only then did you seal it. Loikana Meiser. Loikana Meiser means that the barrels, the containers do not acquire the Kedusha. But Mi Shegafan, I poured wine, again, even in the example of where the containers are not even mine. But that's a side, milsa agavurcha. It's not about ownership of the barrel. So when my barrels, your barrels, I poured wine prior to it being designated as anything. It's tevel into barrels. I sealed the barrels. Now that this barrel Aleph, is sealed, I make a declaration that barrel A is Meiser Sheni for the tevel. Okay. Why? We'll leave in the Gemara. The rule now will be is that now when the wine becomes imbued with Kedusha of Meiser Sheni with it, until when the wine is consumed, the barrels have the status of Meiser Sheni. Aleph, if I'm planning to take the original to Yerushalmi, I must take it in the barrels. Beis, if I plan to redeem it, amazing. I have to give Ma'ois Pidyon also for the barrels. But even in this case, where Kana Meiser, we'll see in the Gemara, after I consume the wine in Yerushalayim, and now the barrels are empty, here, amazing, the barrels will automatically revert back to its chulin status. This is important. So remember this. So that's the word. So kankanim will become imbued in this narrow scenario. Next case in the Mishnah. And now that we spoke about meiser in a barrel, now you get the link. Now we're going to move on to truma. But the topic of truma in the barrel will not be whether the barrel is truma. No, that will not be the issue. I'm going to say on my own, whether it's truma or not, it will depend on what we learned above. When did you declare it truma? But maybe the Gemara is going to speak about this. I don't know. The topic now regarding truma is taruvas. You have a barrel. Now, just reminding ourselves, in many areas, and midai raisa, there's a bittul beroiv. In the case that we're talking about dimua. The word dimua means if truma gets mixed into chulin. Now, don't forget, if truma gets mixed into chulin, unlike chveis, treif, and kosher, no Jew can ever eat treif. When you don't have bittul, that's the end, kaput, right? The food has to be thrown out. Don't forget that if truma gets mixed into chulin, the worst case scenario is not the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is only kohanim can eat it. And the owner of the chulin doesn't have to gift the chulin part of the mixture to the kohen. So he only has to gift the truma part of the mixture. He can charge for the chulin, but he can only charge the market value. The market value of dimua, market value of food that only a kohen can eat is less expensive. So there's going to be some money loss. But now, when it comes to the dinam of bittul, when is truma batal? So we learned the rule of echad b'meya, not echad b'tishan v'teisha. Even though really, if you remember, in the last Masechta we had a machlekes tanoim in the details. But we follow that truma is nullified echad b'meya. But there are exceptions, as those of us who learn Rambam just learned. There are certain items that will never be batal. Right? Davar sheyesh lo matirin will never be batal. Davar hamaymid will never be batal. Davar shebeminyan. However you learn, will not be batal. And the one that's relevant to our topic is a davar chashuv. And a wine that's sealed in a barrel, talking about kankanim. I don't know whether we say this on bottles, but a barrel is a barrel. I only saw a barrel of mashke in 770 Simchas Torah. I know what a barrel means. It's a davar chashuv. So a sealed barrel, it becomes a davar chashuv, and it will never be batal. So let's read the Mishnah. So here again, the Mishnah now, we're moving, it's amazing how you have to chap. We're not talking about Meiser Sheni, we're talking about Truma, and we're not talking about the status of the Kankan. We're only talking about Bitul. So Ad Sheloi Gafan, we're going to use the same logic. If before you bechlal, there's no sealing, you have open barrels of wine, that's Truma wine. Let's say one barrel was Truma. You have even 99. You have 99 of chulin, open barrels, and now you don't know which one is which. All of it is dimua. But if you have 100 chulin or more, that's the rule of bittul b'meya, oilois be'echad b'meya, and you're good to go. But that's only when the barrels are unsealed. Aber misha gafan, once you seal the barrels, now this is going to be an amazing concept. Once you seal the barrels, you render every barrel into a davar chashuv. But let me add another layer to this. Prior to you sealing the barrels, you can actually look as if all of the wine is in the same barrel, in a huge barrel, because the barrels are not sealed. Don't forget, guys, normally mixtures they're mixed. They're not actually mixed. Every wine is in its own barrel. The fact that it's unsealed allows you to consider as if one is mixed into the other. You can pour one into the other. And if you have the ratio of echad b'meya, then it's going to be matal. When the barrels are sealed, first of all, you can't mix them. Every barrel is standing for itself. Well, so what, you can say. But let's nullify the one barrel in the other 100 barrels. You can't do that because of a davar chashuv. Okay. And we have another 2 minutes. Let's chap the next case in the Mishnah. Now, I want to know what will be the status. Can someone who has barrels filled with tevel designate a barrel to be truma for other barrels that are tevel? And why would you not be allowed to do so? Because by truma there's a rule that you can only be toidem min hamukav. Min hamukav means samachloi. Min hamukav might be even touching one the other. And now that we said that when the barrels are sealed, this is important. It's not only about a davar chashuv, but when a barrel is sealed, it separates one container from the other because it's sealed. So if I have, let's say a person is giving 2% truma. A person has 100 barrels of tevel, bona fide tevel, complete tevel truma gedoyla. So the Mishnah is going to tell you that if all of them are sealed, you cannot declare 2 barrels to be truma for the rest, even if the barrels are touching each other, because it's shaloi min amukav, because it's sealed. If it's unsealed, then you can do it. Actually, gafan, before you sealing the barrels, then you are allowed to designate. You can either every barrel separate trumas u'maiseres from every barrel on itself, or especially since they're all together, that's called min amukav. You can take one. You have 50 jugs, 50 containers. One is 2%. One is going to be truma, turning to the top of Lamed Aleph. But the same concept, another consequence of sealing a barrel. But Misha Gafan, once you seal these containers, now when you seal these containers, they are separated one from the other. And therefore, mikol achas va'achas, you don't have the option of designating 2% of the barrels for the rest. Why not? Because of the rule says that Asherilio, that you are lachatchila by truma, you have to give it min hamukaf, and it's not min hamukaf. It's not near each other. They are separated by the fact that they are in seal.